Hey there. Um, my name is Steve Maddox. I'm an attorney, licensed attorney, living in Japan. I've been here for about 12 years this time, um, and practicing law for like the last, well, I guess for like a 9 year period during the 12 years I've been here. And I'll talk more about that later on, exactly how I got to where I am. But and then I lived in Japan before I went to law school, between undergrad and law school, back in the 1990s, from December 1992 until April 1996, for like 3 years, 3 or 4 months, whatever, and teaching English. Then I went to law school, and then I became a lawyer and practiced law in Texas for, I don't know, like 8 something years, whatever, as a litigator. Then in Canada, I went to Canada, got licensed to practice in Canada. So I have a Texas law license, and an Ontario law license, um, and practiced law in Canada for whatever it was, like 5 years or something, until 2014, and also as a litigator. And then I decided to take a year off and come back to Japan, where I thought I could live sort of I needed a break from the practice of law and just sort of the stresses of everything. And Japan was like the last place I'd lived, before law school, where I felt like I had a good life, and I did back then. I mean, things were totally different back then. As an English teacher, it was a really really easy life, and the money was good, and the lifestyle was fun. And there were a lot of other sort of problems living in Japan, obviously. Um, but when I thought about it back in 2013, when I was kind of thinking like I just had reached sort of a point that I just wasn't uh, happy anymore, and I didn't really see a way forward. And I thought I need to go back to the United States. Before I do that, I'm going to take a year off and go to Japan and study Japanese. And I had studied Japanese before, informally, when I lived here originally, and passed the level two, the N2 proficiency exam. So for those who don't know, like back then, it was N1 was the highest, N4 was the lowest, and now I think 5 is the lowest. And so I passed the second level test, and after studying for, well, I guess almost 3 years on my own. And so I could speak and read a little bit. I could speak relatively fluently on a very, very, very narrow range of topics, obviously, because I really didn't know a lot about Japanese. Um, and anyway, and so then I was thinking, like, what I really wanted to do was I really wanted to study Japanese formally. And if I was going to take a year off, I might as well do something that interested me. And I had, I had the money. It wasn't. It's not a humble brag. I mean, I was a lawyer. I was making pretty high income, and I wasn't married at the time. I don't have any kids, so it's pretty easy to, accumulate savings, living like that. So I had some money set aside, and I thought, let's just take a year off. Let's just unplug and let's just go and just do something I always wanted to do, was study Japanese. So came here to Osaka, which is where I am now, and while I was studying Japanese, I met my wife, my current wife, and she doesn't speak English, so like at all. She hates it when I say that, but it's true. She doesn't speak English hardly at all, or at all. So I couldn't take her back with me. I thought there's no way I could take her back into Houston. Like, what would we do? What would she do? It'd be horrible. It'd be a disaster. So I started looking for a job here, and then I did find a job working as in-house counsel for a jewelry company in Kyoto. Now, I'm not going to name names. I've got a lot that I want to talk about life in Japan, but I'm not going to name names. I'm not going to call anybody out. I'm not going to get into anything. But I got some crazy stories to share, which is why I wanted to start this channel. Um, I thought, I've been here for a while, and I worked at the jewelry company for 5.5 years, and it was an absolute crazy, crazy experience. And when I tell you the stories about the things that I saw there, and I think it'll blow your mind. And it was so confusing, and everything was so strange. And I think that part of it being that I had, I had close proximity to management, so I worked directly under the CEO and all of the heads of departments and whatever. And so, I had close access to them, and I had to work in Japanese, and not a humble brag. It wasn't like it was difficult. Japanese is a surprisingly easy language to become proficient at, to become functionally proficient at. And so, the problem that I had was that I had to become functional, you know, as a lawyer, right? Like practicing law, like giving legal advice and explaining legal concepts, which was actually surprisingly easy to do, to become able to do, even that, only studying Japanese for 1 year. But I'll get into all that later on. But the point of it is I had to do it in Japanese, both in writing and spoken and orally. And it was hard at first, but I worked my way into it. And I guess because I was engaging in Japanese, and I was sitting in on meetings that were in Japanese, and I was understanding what was going on, that gave me kind of an insight into how things really were done, and how people interacted, how they talked to each other, and how they interacted. And I guess at the time I didn't really understand sort of the interaction level of things, like why they were doing what they were doing, but I got to see those things, and I also got to see how management operated and decisions that they made. And at that company at that time, the absolutely insane, crazy things that they were doing, and the way they justified them and how they spoke about them, it kind of gave me a unique sort of insight into things. And then after that, I worked for a construction company in Tokyo, an international construction company for Tokyo, and that was also a very bizarre experience, to put it mildly. And I'll go into the details about that. And again, not going to name names. I'm not interested in disparaging anybody. I'm interested in explaining what's going on in Japan, like how Japanese culture works, business culture and social culture, and the structure of it. And just to sort of finish that thought, so I worked there for, I don't know, whatever it was, 6-8 months, something like that. Didn't work out, and it's a crazy story. But and when I get to it, you'll see mind-blowing stuff. So and then I worked at a law firm here in Osaka. Again, not going to name names, but that was also, as it turns out, it turned out exactly as it was going to turn out. And now, looking back on it, and I mean, and I knew it at the time, because by that point in time, I'd sort of figured out Japanese culture, and figured out exactly what was going on, and I understood it, and I thought it would go great because it was a law firm. I thought, it'll go great, and it didn't. It was a total disaster. But it went as you. If I'd known the personalities, if I'd known what was going on, I would have predicted it. It would be completely predictable. And so here's the point. So I've been here, and then I retired. So 2 years ago, I retired. And I've been here, in Osaka, and I have permanent residency. I live with my wife. We have no children. I don't have a car. We don't have kids. I don't have a car. We have very, very few expenses, and we have a good life. And I'm enjoying life now. And I think, and it's given me time to sort of reflect on the time that I've spent here, the grand total of whatever it is, 12 years and whatever 3 months this time, and 3 years and 3 months last time, so whatever that is, I added up 15 and a half years, whatever that is. And all the things that I've experienced. And, I worked in the English teaching industry like a long, long time ago, back when it was crazy, back in the crazy days. And I'll talk about some of that stuff too, because it's pretty interesting, the differences. And I don't know a lot about the English teaching industry now anymore, although I did kind of, between the jewelry company and the Tokyo company, I did kind of dip my toe into the education system, and it was horrifying. Really, it was shocking. It was shocking. I should have known, but anyway.